Welcome back to Everything EOS, the longest running EOS podcast and the official media channel of the EOS Network Foundation. We are born out of the EOS community for the EOS community, and I'm being joined today once again by my co-pilot, Brandon Lovejoy, and our special guest, Daniel Keys. Daniel is the CEO of EOS Nation. They're currently ranked as of today number 5 block producer on the EOS network. EOS Nation is also, they were co-authors on the API Plus Blue Paper. They're also leading the network coordination for the Mandel consensus upgrade. If that's not enough, they're also the creators of EOS Detective, .gems NFT Studio, and most relevant to today's discussion, Pomelo. But before we go any further, don't forget to smash the likes, subscribe, drop us a comment of what you think. It helps the YouTube algorithm show other people our content, suggest it. So if you like it, like the button. Welcome to the show, Daniel. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me. And yeah, smash that like.
Can never forget to smash the like. So we got a lot of topics that I want to cover today, but the first one, let's just jump into Pomelo because depending on when this video comes out, the applications for season 2 are going to be open for grant submissions. But before we get into that, in case anyone watching is not aware of what Pomelo is, or maybe not familiar with what quadratic funding is or where it came from, why don't you introduce what Pomelo is and maybe go into a little bit of detail of quadratic funding?
Yeah. So Pomelo is a crowdfunding platform for the EOSIO ecosystem that democratically allocates public funds to public goods based on basically the wisdom of the crowd. We get the community involved, and anyone can submit a grant application as long as it's a public good. It's eligible to participate, and anybody with EOS can basically vote on which of the proposals they want to see get funded from the matching pool by tossing a little bit of donation to that proposal, which then gets matched by the matching pool. Proportional to the amount of people who are also donating to. So the more people, the more small donations a grant receives, much more percentage of the matching pool they get. So $101 donations is much more powerful than one $100 donation, for example. So it encourages basically getting the sentiment of the community and what are our public goods, and at the same time, an opportunity to give exposure to the types of projects that might not otherwise have gotten a chance. Because instead of getting the attention from the direct funders, you're getting attention from your local communities who are supporting you and raising the attention for your project.
Awesome. So you also mentioned public goods. We got to be noob friendly. And just in case someone hasn't been paying attention, you mentioned public goods a couple of times. You want to elaborate a little bit further on what that actually means?
Sure. Yeah. So a public good essentially is anything that is non-excludable and non-rivalrous, which means anybody can access it for free. And by one person accessing it, doesn't prevent another person from accessing it or diminish the experience for that other person. So it has to be, essentially infinitely scalable and free to access. So, lots of examples, open source software is a perfect example of a public good. More abstract, clean air is a public good. So, a public good is a sort of an economic term, doesn't just apply to blockchain technology, but there's a lot of the core, the things that everybody needs to use the network that are difficult to get funding for because the very nature of them is people expect to be able to access them for free. There's still a big cost to be able to create and maintain those free things. So how do we fund them? In the old days, we had taxes. In the new Web3 world, we've got quadratic funding, and we can. The community can kind of come together and pool some funds together and get together and create ways to figure out what are the things that we care about as a community and get them funded.
Yep. So we had the first season. We're about to enter season 2 of Pomelo, or maybe we're already in it, depending on when this comes out. but season one was very successful. So the magic behind the quadratic funding, as you kind of explained what quadratic funding is, the magic behind it is actually the matching pool. And that's the pool of funds that gets matched to the grant proposals based on the one number of funds accredited to a specific proposal, but then also the number of unique contributors. And based on the quadratic formula, the matching pool gets matched and distributed to each individual proposal. So like you said, the more unique individuals, the more the matching. And in season one, there were 1,022 unique contributors that was spread out across 75 approved grants. And the total funding for public goods was $635,869. And out of that, 500,000 of it came from the matching pool, which was donated by the ENF. So wildly successful. I can't wait to see season two, which the dates for open grant applications, March 22nd until April 11th. That is when anyone in the EOS community or EOSIO community is able to submit their proposals for a grant. And then the contributions, which is when the community is actually able to donate to each individual proposal. That begins on March 30th and it runs all the way to April 29th. So we have got an even bigger matching pool this season. So the ENF committed to go even bigger for season two. So the matching pool was $888,888. Wait, wow, I messed that one up. 888,000. Wait,
you had it.
I did.
I'm
just looking at 888. I have it written as millions, don't I? On my notes, I'm like, wait a minute. So we'll just leave this in because this is funny. So it's $888,888.88 in comparison to $500K in season one. And on top of that, on the fireside chat last week, Eve LaRose made it public that on top of the $888,888.88, the NF will also be doing a direct contribution on top of that of $125,000. That'll happen after the matching occurs, though, so it won't affect the quadratic formula. And I'm just super excited for it. And
on top of that, the .gems team is actually donating an additional 5,000 EOS for the matching pool. That was the money that was raised through the primary sales of the Pomelo Season 2 NFT promo that we did.
So could I get a $1 million for the EOS community? So this number is huge. And if you think, so quadratic funding kind of originated from a research that Vitalik did and some co-authors also. And then the first example of quadratic funding being put into action in blockchain is a project called Gitcoin, which has been around for a couple of years now. And they're obviously a lot more established. But one of the things that I in my research for this show, and I mentioned it in Telegram a couple months ago before the first season, is our matching pool for EOS, as small as our community is compared to the Ethereum community, it took Gitcoin up until their 11th round. So there's one round every quarter. So to reach round 11, they were in their 2.5 year of being a product for quadratic funding. It took them that long, 2.5 years, before their matching pool reached the a little bit less than, or to be more than $888,888. They're currently on round 13. So they've only had a bigger matching pool than what we're offering for season two for their last two rounds now. Granted, their community contributions are a bit larger as far as like what is actually being donated before the matching happens. But I've seen in some of the telegrams, people are kind of, instead of being excited about what we have in front of us, they're like, why isn't it more money? This is a lot of money. And because last period, there were only 75 applicants. So you're like only competing against less than 100 other proposals. I mean, hopefully it's more this season, but the competition's much smaller. So you have an opportunity to get a much larger piece of the pie than if you're trying to go through something like Gitcoin, where yes, there's more contributors and now their matching pool is a lot bit higher now. But you have to compete with thousands of different applicants, and we don't have that here. So it's like this giant opportunity in front of everyone. And I am super excited for it. There's also some new features that are being enacted for season 2. You want to kind of walk through what those are?
Yeah, our team's been working really hard ever since season 1 to make sure that season 2 is even better. You know, it's 77% bigger matching pool. We wanted to make it at least 77% better experience too. So you guys can be the judge of that on whether or not we achieve that. We had a big focus on accessibility and Sybil resistance. So I'll talk a little bit about both of those things based on the learnings from. So the great thing about having a round every 3 months, another round, is we're learning every time. So we just had our first season. Going into it, we really didn't know what to expect. This is our first time hosting a Pomelo season. We had the benefit of learning a ton from the Gitcoin team. You know, that's a big advantage for one of us. I think we were able to scale so quickly compared to them is because, you know, they proved the model for us already, and we get to benefit from that. But it's a lot different watching someone else doing something to actually doing it yourself and experiencing that feedback firsthand from the people who are using it. So some of the things we learned through season 1, our community is much different than the Ethereum community. I would say ours is more global in terms of, like, we have a very large and strong Chinese and Korean speaking communities. Gitcoin is 100% tailored to the English speaking community. We knew that going into season 1, and we made it a priority to make sure that we had it already from season 1 translated in English and Chinese and Korean, and that we had options for them to log in. There's logging into, again, I'm talking a little bit about Sibyl. So because the more people that donate, the bigger the prize. There's a big incentive to create fake accounts and pretend you're more than one person. There are different ways you can defend against this. The most basic way, and all we were doing in season 1, is you got to log in with a social platform. We offered a few different options and link your EOS account, and you're only going to be credited for, you know, that one social account that you're. That's not going to stop you from creating lots of social accounts, but at least we created a bit of a barrier there. That was already different from how Gitcoin was doing it. Gitcoin was only allowing people to log in with GitHub. We wanted to give a little bit more options for, you know, the rest of the world who maybe not using GitHub. But we still, in season 1, we were lacking Chinese native social options. So that's one thing you're going to see different in season 2 is you'll be able to log in with Bihu and Weibo, which are kind of like the Google and the Twitter equivalents in China. They got hundreds of millions of users using these platforms. They're used to using it, as opposed to, you know, Google, where they got to use a VPN to be able to access.
They also have a bit of Sybil resistance even built in. Like, I don't know if I'm pretty sure they're similar to WeChat, where you actually have to have someone invite you in who already has an account. So that automatically adds a little bit more Sybil resistance than, like, if you think of like Facebook or creating a Google account. I don't even need a phone number. I just need another email address to sign up for these accounts. Right. So it's a lot easier to just create a bunch of them. So
some of these social platforms are more Sybil resistant than others. Like GitHub, for example, has capabilities built in where we know how long that GitHub account has existed, and we could, for example, prevent you from participating if it's a brand new account. That's something that's, I believe, unique to GitHub. Google, it's pretty easy to create lots of Google accounts. Not as easy to create lots of Apple accounts. WeChat, very difficult to create an account. So yeah, some certain social platforms are more difficult to Sybil attack than others. And there's a trade-off, you know, when we were looking at what social platforms do we support, that's something we had to think about. The more that we provide, the more opportunities there are to, like, okay, I'm going to create a Google account, I'm going to create a GitHub account, I'm going to create we're creating actually opportunity for Sybil there. But if we don't do that, then maybe we will reduce the amount of participation we get from donors. And kind of one of the principles that we're following is that we believe the best Sybil defense is more participation from real people. If you have, thousands of real people actually participating, then in order to have a successful Sybil attack that actually makes a big difference, you're going to have an equally strong Sybil attack.
Right.
So there's this tension there around making it hard enough to create an account that it's resistant to bots and Sybil, but yet easy enough that we're not creating a barrier for participation. So that's been a big balancing act we've been playing with. And then again, in season 2, in one way, we've actually expanded our attack vector for Sybil because we've added more social options. We've added some more native Chinese login options. We have to counter that. I can talk about this a little bit. We're added some new Sybil defenses in season 2. But go ahead, Brandon. I think you got a question.
Yeah, well, in addition to social, it seems like we should mention Port probably, which was a successful project on Pomelo season 1, which maybe you could talk a little bit about that. It's kind of the carrot rather than the stick of providing a bonus to people that authenticate using that method, and how else you guys are approaching that.
That's exactly where I was going with. So there's that. On the alternative, we had to raise our Sybil defenses, and we did that with something called the trust bonus. So this is something they're already doing on Gitcoin as well. So we're not reinventing the wheel here. But Port is a unique solution to the EOS ecosystem and to Pomelo. I don't believe they have even an equivalent option on Gitcoin. It's a pretty cool solution. As you said, Port, they participated in Pomelo season 1. They got some funding from Pomelo season 1, and they took that funding to keep building. And it's now at the point where we've been able to actually integrate it, and it's going to be one of the options as a trust bonus. So what a trust bonus is, it's a completely optional, and what it does is it gives an opportunity to donors to boost the value of their donation in terms of how much it gets matched. So you can, by increasing your trust bonus, whenever you make a donation, our quadratic formula basically just treats you as if you donated more than you actually did. So for example, if you got 150% trust bonus, you donate 1 EOS, we're gonna credit you for having donated 1.5 EOS and then match on that. So Port it's pretty cool technology that allows you to prove that you have a physical passport with you without having to expose your personal information. So it's not KYC. It's they've got an app you can download on Google Play or Apple App Store. You tap the NFC chip. Pretty much every passport has an NFC chip in it, at least the recent ones. And they're pretty much all on the same standard. Unfortunately, Germany is one of the exceptions. So currently, German passports don't work with Port. That's one thing that's coming, from what I understand. But anyways, all these NFC chips have a public key, and so you can basically tap the NFC on your phone, prove the public key for your passport that you have it in your possession, and we can confirm that nobody else is using the same passport. So we know that at least, maybe you got 5 passports. That's possible, but at least you have a passport. You're probably not a bot. Maybe it's your sister's passport, but at least you've increased the likelihood of you being a real, real participant.
And in addition to Port, and then there are other trust bonuses. Are you using Eden membership as one other trust bonus? And what are the other ones?
we won't be having a trust bonus for Eden yet. It's something we've been talking about. Right now, it's still Eden is only available. Like it's pretty predominantly Western. Now we have the Chinese Eden starting to do things. We would like to get to a point where we can give a trust bonus to Eden members once the playing field is more equal for everyone to have an opportunity to join Eden. We don't want to give an advantage to the Western community. But the technology is ready. We can very easily just like flip a switch, and now we've got trust bonuses for Eden members. But we do have for basically you can boost your trust bonus by linking multiple social accounts. So let's say I primarily logged in with my GitHub account, but now I can also link my Google, my Bihoo, my Apple, and for every extra social account that I link, I get a 5% trust bonus.
And that's pretty cool.
Port's going to be 25%.
Identity is essentially the sum of all of your different connections, and by combining all of your socials, that's kind of creating almost like a decentralized identity. Like it's the sum of all of your different connections that adds the trust bonus. You're more trustworthy the more different social logins you have. So beyond the Sybil resistance for the accounts, there's also some deep like on-chain analysis that happens in the background too. EOS Nation are the developers behind EOS Detective, which is a very powerful tool of basically seeing the origins of where EOS and other altcoins are coming from and where they're going. So you can kind of see if I just send EOS to 10 different accounts and then I contribute to my own proposal with all 10 accounts, if it wasn't caught, then I would get a big multiplier on my quadratic funding donation. But in the background, as we've seen with Gitcoin and as we saw with the season 1 analysis, when the Pomelo team, after the season ends and they do their analysis, they kind of detect that stuff and they lump them all together. So even though I thought I was being tricky, I sent it to a bunch of accounts. I thought I was playing games. Your team just kind of sees that and you're like, nope, we're going to combine all of those. Even though you created 100 accounts, it's the same as one account sending it because it's cheating.
Yeah. Some people try to get creative and game the system and create lots of accounts, but it's a public blockchain. We've got some pretty powerful tools. We can see all of that happening, and we can adjust the matching allocation accordingly. And I would say, actually going back to, you mentioned that some people don't appreciate the amount of money that's on the table. They're like, I wish it would be more. And what I'm going to say now applies both to those people as well as to the cheaters. The money that's on the table right now for this season is a fraction of like the real game that really we're playing here. If you want to be successful in the long run, Pomelo is not a sprint, it's a marathon. And there's more money being put on the table every 3 months. So, okay, yes, maybe this round, you're not going to get a ton of money, but if you participate every round, you'll keep getting topped up season after season. And if you're playing nasty, trying to bend the rules and milk the funds from the rest of your community, and you get caught, you're going to really hurt your chances of being successful in future seasons. And the community doesn't appreciate everyone here wants a fair shot at this money. So the community is watching out for this sort of thing. So it's not just the evidence we see on chain that can result in adjustments to the matching pool, or people, we had to disqualify one team in season 1 because it was just obvious that they were breaking the rules very early. And the evidence that we saw was both on chain and off chain, because community members were witnessing, hey, this isn't fair, taking screenshots, sending them to us, and kind of the community self-polices. So I expect we're going to have more of that in season 2. We give everyone the opportunity to report, hey, if you see anyone breaking the rules, there's a button there on the grant. You can report it. You can share your evidence with us. And like I said, I think people who play that game are failing to see the big picture. They're shooting themselves in the foot and yeah, maybe they're going to get away with a little bit of money this season, but they're missing out on the kind of that building that reputation in the community over time, building a brand, getting money quarter after quarter. And really the grand prize in my view is not the money you earn from the matching pool. It's now you've maxed out your reputation in Pomelo, and now you've got the attention of the ENF to get direct grants. Maybe you got the attention of Helios or whatever VCs are now paying attention to the ecosystem. That's the prize.
Mm-hmm.
We're just kind of Pomelo. We're just offering the community a foot in the door, and stepping stones towards that ultimate goal. We don't see ourselves as our goal with Pomelo is not to fund all the public goods. It's to give the little guys in the community an opportunity to prove that they've got what it takes to build the public goods or build whatever it is they want to build.
Also helps. Sorry, Brandon. It also helps identify the amount of interest in a particular team or a particular initiative. It's not the ENF like making these decisions. It's not Eden. It's not like Pomelo team. It's the community deciding like where the interest is, and rather than trying to game the system, just market. Like there's another social feature that you added that makes better social sharing with better link previews and things like that. It's just go market yourself. The community is not that big, and even on chain you could spam memos if you want to and see who contributed to the last round.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a good strategy for Pomelo is to kind of market and lobby yourself within Eden. And Brandon happens to be one of the first chief delegates from Eden. I see you wanted to say something about Eden, so why don't you?
Yeah, on that note, in case anyone doesn't know, Eden is kind of the fractal governance process that's being experimented with on EOS, and has an element of funding as well, where the people that are elected within the Eden process end up being able to allocate resources wherever they see fit. So I was kind of wondering what your thoughts were, Daniel, on what you see as the proper relationship between Eden and Pomelo. We saw some attempts in the previous election, I think, by certain people within Eden to like where's the line? Because it's community money going to Eden, and then to spend that community money to amplify different projects that are then receiving more community money. Like how
Right.
do you see that?
To me, it's super synergistic. I think we have the Eden membership is just like a highly engaged group of EOS enthusiasts who are all meeting together, checking things out, sharing, helping each other out. So there's and what I saw in season 1, there's a lot of the Eden members helping each other out to craft their proposals before the season started and interview each other. We had people doing Pomelo pitches and interviewing people and putting up videos, and this is kind of all just grew organically out of the Eden members, which I think is awesome. And then on top of that, there's just the synergy of we got this funding coming to we have a process electing people to receive funding from the network based on the community's, I guess, perspective that these are responsible people who are good at allocating funds. Now they've got funds in our native currency, EOS, that can now be deployed to fund things. Where's the best place to look for things to fund things? I would argue Pomelo is probably it right now. You got a nice, hey, look at all this menu of options of things I can fund. I got the teams all coming here, advertising what they can do, building a reputation season over season, and it expands, I guess, the reach of Eden. Because Pomelo is the only way to get funding from Eden is to become an Eden member. Whereas I would say, I guess maybe Pomelo is a little more broad. You don't have to, anyone can come long as you can create a proposal and you're okay accepting money in EOS, you can create a proposal. So I think there's an opportunity for Eden members to be able to spread their funding outside of the Eden members to get actual real good things built that the Eden members need.
I see it as an amplifier. So Eden delegates, there's 3 different levels. You make it through the first round. I don't know the exact numbers where it is now, but they were getting around 100 EOS per month. And then there was another level. Brandon, what was the level for the 5 chief delegate or the 6 chief delegates?
It's somewhere around 1,000 EOS
Monthly?
Yeah, and then there's like 4x that for chief delegate, but we're adjusting it, or we're proposing to adjust it to flatten it somewhat so that the head chief delegate doesn't receive 4x the amount of all the other.
So there's the biggest group is the people who were trustworthy enough that they can convince a group of like 6 or 7 people that they should go on to the next round just by getting through, just by reaching a consensus amongst your first group of 5 to 7 people. You're able to get 100 EOS per month. You could contribute that to whatever you want. I could give 100 EOS to Brandon, or I can give 100 Brandon to whatever Daniel's building, and they get 100 EOS. That's great. But if I just wait until a Pomelo season, it's like, Brandon, your idea is great, whatever your idea is. Why don't you propose it through Pomelo, and I'll support you with my Eden funds. I get 100 EOS per month. I send 100 EOS to Brandon's proposal, and assuming other contributors throughout the ecosystem contribute uniquely to amplify the quadratic funding, my 500 EOS could easily turn into 500 or more EOS for Brandon. And this amplification, I personally think it's a great way of looking at like the APRs that you're earning through like the EOS Nation proxy, or through like the Nudex proxy or the Binance proxy. So you're getting like this 2% APR. It's not much. Like you could pocket it and use it. Or if you want to grow the ecosystem, you want to contribute back. If you have 1,000 EOS and you get a 2% yield, you get like 20 EOS per year in yield. If you put those 20 EOS per year into Pomelo, those 200 EOS or 20 EOS can turn into anywhere between like 50 to 100, maybe even 150 EOS in contributions to whatever initiatives I'm trying to support. And it goes all the way across the board, from infrastructure to SDKs to open source code to marketing. Going back to the Gitcoin examples, like there's so much media, marketing, and information that's created out of Gitcoin funding through their quadratic funding. The ETHub, the Defiant. So the Defiant is like one of the biggest DeFi newsletters and podcasts in Ethereum. It was initially funded through Gitcoin. That allowed them to create good content, to pay content creators, pay editors, to create good enough newsletters and content that they were able to start charging money to create a business model out of something that would have been very difficult to do if it was just one guy trying to do it while working a full-time job. They were able to build a team because of these quadratic funds. Bankless, another big podcast, YouTube channel, and DeFi newsletter, created out of Gitcoin funding. This Week in Ethereum News, the Daily GUI, Finematics. If you ever watched on the YouTube videos, those it's like a little hand drawing on a whiteboard and it's explaining all kinds of DeFi concepts. That came from Gitcoin funding. That content creator, that particular content creator, is funded tens of thousands of dollars per year to do this through Gitcoin. And we have, like I said at the beginning, we have less competition here in Pomelo and the EOS community as it currently stands. So people want to see more content created. Like I would love to see other people doing these interviews and doing like animations and explainer videos, and all of that. You can get paid for it. All you got to do is take the time to write a proposal outlining what you want to do, and then go convince other people that you could do it, and just keep delivering season after season, build up your trust. And eventually you could have a big enough audience that you can create a sustainable revenue model outside of the public goods funding, but you're still a public good. So you're kind of subsidizing your business model with it.
And I think people are starving for opportunities. Like people want to spend their EOS on doing good things for the EOS community. Until recently, there was nothing to spend your EOS on. People would just, you could collect your yield and stack your yield and try to stack more yield. And that was the only thing happening on the EOS ecosystem. And what we're seeing in season 1, it's like, wow, there's something I can actually do useful with my EOS now. And it gets, like you said, multiplied, amplified through the quadratic. So it feels good to be able to help my friends on the projects they're working on. I'm taking this, this EOS token that was really just a speculative. Now it actually has tangible, utility in that there's a real thing I can do with it, and it's fund something through this multiplication process. And what I've seen is, like you said, all it takes is put a pitch up and talk to people, let them, people want to help you. If you, just be friendly, go talk to them. Don't try to cheat them by gaming the system, get out there and make friends with the other grant participants. And people are hungry. They're looking for opportunities to do good with their EOS. And I'm really excited. I'm looking forward to, my dream is that we, as we continue to build Pomelo and all the other things in the ecosystem, we're kind of building this circular economy where, previously, if I wanted to fund a developer, I would have to cash out to fiat and pay them in fiat. But as all of these tools we're building mature more, we got bounties coming soon. That's sort of like the inverse of a grant. Instead of having something I want to get paid to do, I have some work that needs to get done, and I've got some money to pay for it to happen. So we've got this loop forming. Eden members earn EOS through inflation. They take that EOS to fund grants on Pomelo. The grant owners now have funding to start building something. They need to hire devs and actually get the work done. Now they put up some bounties. Now they're funding directly with EOS, and all the money stays in the family. And we're creating volume and circulating that, and people are getting, their lives are improving. They're getting funded to build the things they care about. They're making things that are valuable to the community. They're, working on meaningful work that they care about and getting paid to do it. So it's like financial independence. It's like everyone's dream that, why do you want to quit your day job to do your own thing? Because you want to work on the things you care about. And this is an opportunity for that.
Do you have a timeline for the bounties opening up?
Unfortunately, no, I don't have so it's still a work in progress. It's probably going to be at least a few months, cool. Maybe two.
One more mention of the tie-in with Eden, and Brandon asked how they synergize. We've got the next election coming up on April 9th. April 9th happens to fall right in the middle of the Pomelo donation season. And right after the election, we went back and looked at when the funds became available for the Eden elected delegates. And they were able to claim their first batch of funds right after the election. So assuming it's the same, and I have no reason to believe otherwise, on April 10th, whoever wins as a delegate in the election on April 9th, you could immediately start contributing in your first claim of funds to Pomelo proposals. So I see that as a perfect way to campaign through Eden itself. Is literally you could campaign on other people's proposals. They're all going to be up starting on March 22nd. So you could go into the Eden election and say, man, these 4 proposals are the best. I'm just going to run. I'm just going to basically pitch these 4 proposals that I want to support. And that's how I'm going to reach consensus. My whole campaign is I'm going to support these. I'm reputable. You know me from the community. I'm telling you exactly what I'm going to contribute to in this round of Pomelo in between seasons. I'll contribute in other ways. I could talk about that, or I could just hang on to those EOS for the next season of Pomelo. And that's the best way to amplify your value that you can give to these value contributors in the ecosystem is through Pomelo by that amplification. You only need to make it through one round of consensus. You only need to convince 6 or 7 people that you're the guy that is trustworthy and reputable enough to go on to the next round. And immediately you get, it's a little bit less than 100 EOS now because of the treasury, but let's say like 80 to 100 EOS per month. So you have that immediately, 80 EOS immediately that you could just throw right into Pomelo season 2. And that 80 EOS turns into like 500 EOS, depending, or even more, depending on which proposal you're contributing to.
There was some talk, at least among chief delegates, about modifying the election cycles to more perfectly coincide with the Pomelo seasons. Sounds like you guys would be a fan of that. In general, how consistent would you say that the Pomelo seasons are going to be going forward? Is it something you could set your watch by, or is it going to like drift?
No, it should become more and more consistent. The goal is we want to get on a very predictable cadence every 3 months. Basically, you'll be
Cool.
able to set your watch by it, hopefully, eventually.
Nice. So one of the proposals is to adjust the Eden election cycle to be 3 months. So that should work
Perfect.
nicely.
Yeah. They would feed right into each other.
Right. So we have an audience here. What are some things you guys want to see proposed in season 2 that we didn't necessarily see in season 1, or that was proposed in season 1 but didn't get the support that you wish it would have?
You're asking me?
I'm asking you guys. Yeah.
I'd love to
see.
I'd love to see more. You kind of spoke to it. I think there's some good opportunity for content creators. We saw a lot of very ambitious tech proposals. I'd like to see more content creators. You don't have to be a developer to benefit from Pomelo. You can, do a podcast, write some articles, draw some comics. We had one proposal from Lars last season to the zine, which unfortunately he didn't get funded enough to pursue it, and I think he withdrew his proposal. But I'd love to see more of that sort of thing this season, and hopefully some support from the community for those.
Yeah, exactly. Those are my sentiments exactly. I feel like we're starting to make some headway on the tech side, and we've funded the blue papers, and the proposals are starting to get some action on that side. And perhaps where EOS could use a little extra love is on the arts and culture side of things to, create like a enjoyable environment that people want to be around in and tell good stories about what it is we're up to and all that. So yeah, I'm right 100% behind you with content creation.
I want to see some high quality meme creation.
Yeah.
On Gitcoin, there's literally a proposal called Ethereum Memes. It's a Twitter account, and they've raised over $60,000 or $70,000 over the last year or two. And that's their whole proposal is I'm just going to make dank memes and I'm going to post them on Twitter, and that's what it is. And I would love to see someone get some support. Obviously, it's going to take a while. I don't know if you'll get the 60K right away, but that was on that proposal was through multiple rounds of Gitcoin.
Right.
Also, the content creation, I agree 100%. And the cool thing that could happen is some people have something to say, but they don't necessarily have the skill set to edit the video to make it look or sound good. So if there's enough people with something to say who can kind of either propose themselves independently or form some sort of alliance where you could have one video editor that they just edit videos for 6 different people and 6 different people's YouTube channel. Then you have one video editor that's got one individual doesn't give him enough work that he could maybe quit his job or maybe pick this up as a part-time job. But then you have multiple people who are getting funded. None of them are able to leave their jobs. They're just so busy or whatnot, or they just can't edit. They could all kind of group up and give someone a full-time editing job. Then you all of a sudden you have your first full-time decentralized video editor guy in EOS who's just readily available and becomes basically a contractor to the network. And then eventually that guy's plate's full, and then another person needs to pop up, then another person, and then we could just keep expanding. And that's kind of what I want to see. I hope we start to see some of that after season 2. I think we didn't get enough content creators. Obviously, the Bees got a lot of funding and they do some content. But like the names that I mentioned from Gitcoin, like the Defiant and the Bankless, and then the Finematics guy, I want to see like high quality stuff like that. Like if someone wants to focus on educational videos, like 5-minute like animated videos that just explain different concepts within EOS, I would love to see something like that. And you could take that funding. You don't
Remember
even have
EOS
to
Weekly? Man, I wish EOS Weekly was still around, getting funded by Pomelo.
Yeah, and with the funding, you just have to be the idea guy. Write a script, use your Pomelo funding, go on Fiverr, go on Upwork, find someone that if you explain in detail exactly what you want, it's not that expensive to get that kind of work done. So that's what I want to see. Is I want to start seeing more information and media being created through the Pomelo funding. That's something I would just absolutely love to see.
Yeah, I think you're right on with the video editing too. It's like I know Chuck McDonald has been doing that for the
Monster. Awesome.
delegates, and we could use 10 of him, because honestly, there's so much content created across this community, and most of it just down the memory hole, and you never see it again. But if somebody could be plucking out the little clips here and there that are really high value,
Just pure curation. Like
Mhm.
there's so much going on. You don't even have to be a content creator. You become a content curator.
Totally.
Take the good stuff and assemble it in a way that's easy to digest. That would be super valuable. I know I got people on my team saying, I can't keep up with all the stuff that's going on.
Totally.
How can we get this in a digest that lets me catch up easily?
I would love to see a channel. I'd love to see a channel where people just grab clips and they just put it in a queue, and it's just rolling 24/7, and you can just dip into this infinite queue of good content and scroll around. And
the clips are powerful. It's something I always wanted to do with everything EOS back in the day, but it's just I didn't have the time, and we didn't have any funding. We're doing with the ENF now. With the fireside chats, they go anywhere between 2 to 7 hours. So most normal people don't have an appetite for that long of consumption. But if you could take the bite-sized clips and give a 5-minute clip to an audience, you're more than likely going to have a lot more views and a lot more attention on whatever the idea or whatever was presented in that clip. So having more of that, because obviously it's nice that the DNF's doing it now, but we're not doing clips of like the Helios interviews or whatever. If Dan's on Crypto Dunker, no one's going and taking the little bite-sized clips of like the most like best parts of a 1-hour video.
And I know there are people in this community who are watching every minute. The diehard fans. I see them on every single fireside chat, there for the entire thing.
Yep.
It's like, hey, you're already there consuming it. Here's an opportunity for you to make some money by now start putting a little bit of work into curating and polishing it up, and there you go. You got yourself an income stream to just keep doing what it is you're already doing and loving.
Totally.
All right, so we've been doing this 50 minutes. I like to keep them roughly around an hour, just because I don't want to lose people. I want to respect everyone's time. So we
Speaking of clips, yeah.
we just published the fourth and final of the original blue papers. EOS Nation was part of the core author team of API Plus. Aaron already did a really great job last week, and he continues to do a good job of explaining like the central API service, similar to Infura. We've got the transaction lifecycle. We'll have some media next week or this week, depending on when you see it, that kind of explains that one. That's the first proposal being put into action and being funded into development with Object Computing Incorporated. Daniel, before we started recording, you mentioned you wanted to talk a little bit about proposal number 8 from the API Plus blue paper, which was about the graph. So I'll just...
Yeah. So we had the pleasure of participating in the API Plus blue paper. I can't take any credit. That was really all Matthew on my team, who was doing all the heavy lifting. Tons of hours put into researching and writing the state of APIs on EOS, and at the same time, what is everyone else doing outside of the EOS ecosystem? Eve did a great rant recently about consensus building, about talking about how bad consensus builders try to expect others to come to you where you are, and good consensus builders will go to where the people are and then try to bring you along the journey. And I think the same thing applies. What we're trying to do as an EOS network is build consensus with the entire ecosystem that EOS is the best place to build on. And until now, we've been doing the bad way of kind of working in our little silo, building things our way, and expecting that the others are going to adopt the way they do things to our way of doing things because we believe it's better. And through the work we were doing on the API Plus, we learned a lot about the graph. We did a lot of research into what's everyone else, what are the standards outside of EOS? And we were actually lucky to get a taste of the graph prior to that, as we kind of got tuned into the graph. As I'm sure you guys know, the EOS Canada, the dFuse team, who they built dFuse on EOS, we got a large grant to basically pack up their EOS business and move to the graph and build on the graph network. We were operating the community edition of dFuse at the time. We're the only other team besides the dFuse team who had at that point operated dFuse. And the cool thing about what happened there with the old dFuse team, now the StreamingFast team, moving to the graph. And another cool thing, Eden often talks about how we're battle tested in EOS. 100% agree. What made it possible for the StreamingFast team to be successful in this with what they built on EOS in the world is because they built a solution that scales because they had to, because they were building it on EOS. And we were going through IDOS, and like there was a period of a couple of years where no other chain came close to the amount of transaction volume happening on EOS. And the StreamingFast team built a history solution that can keep up with that amount of volume. And at some point, the Binance Smart Chain got to a point where it was becoming very high in volume, and the solutions that they had built there couldn't keep up. And the StreamingFast team were like, hey, we got something that can handle this. Watch this. And they proved that, yeah, we got something here that can scale what you guys are trying to build. And that core technology, the fire hose that powers dFuse, is now the same core technology that's powering the graph. And so again, our team has a lot of experience operating the fire hose. And again, that's how we discovered the graph. And it was like, okay, there's something interesting going on over here. And as we continued to research through this API Plus paper, it was like, wow, the graph is the future. And you can think of the graph kind of like dFuse, but instead of it being in a silo on EOS, it's multi-chain, decentralized, anyone can participate, and it's compatible across all of the chains.
Okay, so but for a total noob who doesn't know what any of these words mean,
sure.
like functionally, what is the graph? What role is it performing? And Firehose, and like,
yeah,
how does this all connect into EOS, and why is it significant?
So it's providing useful real-time data to developers. Really, it's a solution. It's what makes it possible to build actually rich and performant Web3 experiences. If you want to have a UI that actually shows you the current state of the transactions, as let's say I built a DeFi app, and a user does a transaction, I want to be able to tell them immediately that transaction was successful, for example. Or I want to be able to show them the transaction volume over time. When there's like hundreds of thousands of transactions happening every second, to be able to have the, as a dApp developer, trying to display that without having the technology that basically what it does is it like index. You can almost think of it like the Google of Web3 data.
Mm.
You've got all this mass amount of data coming at you in real time, and you need a way to collect it all, organize it in a way that is actually queryable, so that you can actually get, you know, valuable insights from it. Otherwise, it's just like
Too
a
much.
bunch of numbers coming at you, and you can't do anything with it. You can't keep up with it, and now you have a UI that doesn't reflect the reality of what's happening because it's too much happening. So the dFuse was kind of, they're the first ones to crack streaming data kind of on EOS. They took that technology they built on EOS, applied it now on Binance Smart Chain, Ethereum, and Graph has become a standard, really. You can think of it kind of like how if EOS wants to succeed, a big part of our, EVM is a big part of our strategy of trying to get, going back to like, we want to get we want to go where the developers are rather than requiring the developers to come to us. Having EVM on EOS is a good step in that direction. The Graph, I would say, is like the other piece of that. For example, a lot of like, having a Graph index is a prerequisite for a lot of the data aggregators out there. Like if you want your TLV for your DeFi app to be actually displayed and counted anywhere, there needs to be some way you can prove that you can show, hey, look, we got all this TLV, we got all this volume, but you have to be able to pass that data in a way that's actually digestible to that data aggregator. So, like CoinGecko, for example, if you read the requirements these days, it's like, if you want your TLV to be reported in CoinGecko, you have to have a Graph index for your, otherwise we're not going to, we're going to ignore your, so then now as a DeFi project, you now have no incentive to actually add to the TLV to your app. So this is something we saw with Bancor is no longer running on EOS. They were for a while running on both EOS and Ethereum. And they had tokens supported on both Ethereum and on EOS. And we were helping them at the time. We built the UI for them for their EOS pools. And we were involved with the community and noticing, for example, everyone's putting all the liquidity on Ethereum for their token, and no one's adding liquidity on EOS. And we would ask them, and they'd be like, I don't get credit for the liquidity I add on EOS because it's not being reported up anywhere because we don't have the, it's not plugged in to the ecosystem that reports TLV. So why would I, if I got $1 million, I'm going to put it all on Ethereum because I'll get credit for it, and it'll make my DeFi app seem more, successful. So if we want to make EOS an attractive place for liquidity to get added, DeFi applications, we need to create an environment where that gets honored, it gets recognized by the rest of the ecosystem. And based on everything that we've seen, it seems that the Graph is that standard. The Graph is to Web3 data as EVM is to smart contracts.
Great. Very, good explanation.
So we're already, again, that proposal in the API Plus, I would say, is what has our team the most excited. And so much so that we've already started hiring. We hired a Graph community manager recently, and we've already are running on Binance Smart Chain and Ethereum. We've got we've got them indexed now, and we're going to continue working towards being able, ideally, to be able to provide substreams for things like PancakeSwap. And the idea is, through that, we're keeping up with the industry. We're making friends with the Graph ecosystem, everyone who's there, so that hopefully then we can bring them along back. Hey guys, EOS is pretty cool. Let's now start supporting EOS on the Graph. We're already here. We can help. We're already running infrastructure on EOS. We just need some help from the community to make sure that the software supports it.
So is this like the main roadblock then for projects like Bancor to come back to EOS, or are there other stumbling blocks? I'm a fan of Bancor and AL
Yeah,
Herzog and those guys, so I was
yeah,
kind
they're
of
great
bummed.
guys.
I was bummed when they moved on, and I want them back.
Yeah, I can't. I would say it's definitely a major one. I don't know if it's the only one. There's still a sentiment issue with EOS that we're working on fixing.
Yeah.
But I would say this is a really critical piece. Like I said, it was preventing adoption of liquidity pools on EOS. We created the system. People would start the pools, but none of the liquidity would come. And again, the most common reason we heard from the liquidity providers we talked to was, there's no reason for me to add liquidity on EOS because I don't get the credit for it.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest benefits is getting having the ability to get your data on the large data aggregator site. So it's not related to the graph, but a good example is Denis adding all of the EOS DeFi to DeFi Llama, for example, which required custom integrations to be pushed to their GitHub repo. And now all of a sudden, instead of EOS being like number 80 or something in TVL, now all of a sudden it's like number 30. And that's because your data has to become available, and the graph is an easy way to get a lot of different data types indexed and made available on the sites that people are already going to compare blockchains and to see what's going on. Like if you're not even on the site on the list, then people don't know about you. So it's really just getting in front of people. If you guys hired sorry, I was about to change the subject. I was about to say if you guys hired anyone else outside of the graph, but if you have another thought, go ahead.
I was just gonna say the other reason we're excited for the grant is, of the graph is, it's the next evolution of dFuse, I would say. So, we're currently operating dFuse. Currently, dFuse is the only comparable solution within EOSIO. It's not at all scalable. As more and more, so one of the drawbacks of dFuse is you have to index everything. You're very limited in the flexibility of what you can index. There's a little bit of tweaking, but that makes it prohibitively expensive to operate unless you're a glutton for punishment like we are, and you eat the cost. And it took a lot of time to get to the point where we can actually have the infrastructure, our own bare metal infrastructure, set up in a way where it's we can manage. But as the activity on EOS grows, we're already seeing its problem on Wax. Wax has become more and more active. Keeping up with the chain is getting harder and harder because there's just too much data and no options to narrow down which data we keep or collect. With the graph, they've got this concept called substreams, which is basically like you can filter. Instead of having to do everything, you kind of you only index the data that you care about. So you can make much more custom data sets, which is much more scalable.
So you kind of prune the data source. It'd be like if you're using a Twitter API, instead of drinking from a fire hose of every tweet made on Twitter, you're just saying, I want to only follow this account and this account.
Exactly.
Stream me whenever.
Or not even, I want to follow this account and this account anytime they say this hashtag.
It's
like you can get super specific.
It's like faceted search on Amazon. You're like, I want flat screen TVs that are only 27 inches by this manufacturer from wherever, and you can just narrow it down and just get only those results. That's pretty epic. If you can pull that up.
It's very powerful. And again, it goes back to that same problem. Like, why do you even need something like dFuse or the graph? Without it, you got to just this big pool of mess. Even with it, if you're not filtered, it's still too much to handle for most people. So you got to keep, adding these filters. So they're called substreams. That we're really excited about that potential. So we want to ideally, instead of reinventing, like trying to build get our tech guys to add those features to dFuse. Wouldn't it be great if we just made the graph compatible with EOS and we'll just use that, and we can decommission dFuse and just use the graph?
And then that would also kind of decentralize the infrastructure further, because right now Nation's the only team capable of running dFuse Community Edition. So it's very centralized in that sense. Like if you guys, for whatever reason, shut it down or disappeared, like there's no more dFuse.
And we're not just running Community Edition anymore. We had to do all of the paid customers that were previously were dFuse customers when dFuse left. We were the only, so we onboarded them onto our service. And we're kind of like, it's like, honestly, it's not a great business thing. Like we're not making money by hosting dFuse for these clients. For us, it's more about, hey, we didn't want to like dFuse to leave and now all these apps to stop working when EOS already has a bad enough reputation. So we wanted to make sure we maintained that level of service for them. And but again, in the short term, that's going to work. In the long term, though, it's like we gotta kind of evolve to the next generation. And like I said, our team is super excited about the graph and the role that it might play in solving that problem.
I'll get back to the question. So I only have the one more topic, and it was covering the new hires. So you mentioned a community lead for the graph. I saw on Hot Sauce today, we're recording this on Friday, that Dogman's doing Hot Sauce now. So I'm guessing he's some sort of contractor employee for EOS Nation. You guys expanding the team, and in what other areas?
We're expanding the team in multiple areas. We've got, I believe, 6 job openings right now we're trying to fill. A couple of like writers / researchers, which are going to be helping. So, Denny right now is working on the Yield Plus blue paper. I mentioned Matthew worked on the API Plus blue paper. One of the things we learned through that experience is we hate writing. We're great subject matter experts, but we prefer to be building things than writing papers. But we think we have a lot of value to add, with our knowledge. So what we're going to do is, we're going to hire some researchers / writers, let them pick our experts' brains and let them do all the writing. That's one area where we're expanding in. More developers. We're front end and back end developers to help us with things like Pomelo, to help us with things like all of this graph stuff that we're doing. A lot of back end work needed to get things working there. Like sysadmins. So, we want to make sure that we're 24/7, 365. We've got people available on call. So we got to grow our sysadmin team to be able to support that. A scrum master. We need a scrum master because our team's growing. I would say, one of my big challenges as the CEO of EOS Nation right now is just growing pains. As we're doing, there's so much that needs to get done. We're working on so many things. We need to grow the team, which means we need to elevate the people currently on the team, make them better managers, and so they can delegate a lot of the work they're doing as we hire more people. And we need to create an environment that's welcoming to new hires, which is really challenging when, again, we're a startup in this startup industry where there's a million things going on at once, things rapidly evolving. So when you hire a new person, it's hard to onboard them when everyone on your team is already busy doing a million, way overloaded. We're spending a lot of work trying to make the information more accessible. Like we've got a wiki now, our internal EOS Nation wiki, and mission and vision and values and all this sort of stuff that when it was just like our 7 co-founders, we sort of let but now it's like, okay, now we got to bring out all these new hires on board. We got to kind of build these foundations that didn't exist before.
It's tough, man. When we brought Lovejoy on with the NF, it was like I was so busy. It was like making me even more busy to teach him, but you have to go through it, and you become even more busy to try to make yourself less busy.
Yeah.
And in
hiring
the long term,
is like a full-time job. So you spend all this time finding the candidate and then onboarding them, and it's like, oh, but I hired you because I don't have any time to do any work, but I got to do, yeah. So yeah, it's a challenge for sure. But I think it's a good problem to have.
It is.
It's much better than the alternative.
Last week, Aaron from Greymass was talking about how they've hired some devs. I think Amsterdam and some of the teams within Zysan are hiring. Basically everyone that was working in the working groups, they're all kind of ramping up to be able to fulfill the proposals that they wrote about in the blue papers, because they're essentially going to get first crack at them. And there's more work that needs to be done than talent available. So whatever the teams internal to the working groups that wrote the blue papers, like if they can't do some of the proposals that we see as high priority, then we got to put out RFPs to see if anyone else in the ecosystem can do it, or find teams like OCI that are able to do it on a contract. So it's the first time that I can remember in EOS where we had this problem, and it's a good problem to have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. So one more thing in my notes, and then we could take this thing home. You guys have been doing university stuff for a while. Are you guys still doing university work, or did COVID kind of slow that down?
Still going strong. So Vincent on our team is in charge of all of our HR and accounting system. And a big part of what he's doing is building, I would say, an onboarding funnel from universities to EOS developers. And I may get some of the exact details wrong. I think this is maybe our third or fourth semester going through this process. We got something like 50 students, I believe, right now going through this program. And the way that it works is universities got engineering departments, and they got students that need to do engineering projects, and they like to do kind of real world hands-on projects, real use cases, and they're looking for projects to do. And they're interested in innovation. Blockchain is cool. So Vincent's been doing a really great job going out to these universities, meeting with their faculties and selling them on EOS as a worthy thing to have their students learn about, and pitching projects. Actually, here's an idea of an actual project you could build on EOS, and forming little groups of students who would work on these projects. They get support from our team. Denny, he's our wizard on technical side of things. We schedule calls for all of the students to get on with Denny and ask any questions they have. And by the end of it, they've actually built something on EOS. And the best students, we give them internships, and some of them we hire. And the idea is to keep scaling that, keep growing that, so that every semester it's a larger pool of students that we're working with. Even the ones who don't end up working for us, now they've got experience working on EOS. They go off in their other jobs.
Yeah, there's a bunch of teams hiring now.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, the part I'm most excited about is that talent. Maybe they're going to make some cool projects at the end of this, but I think the projects are less exciting than they're going to be mostly prototypes and things like that. The exciting thing is we've got engaged developers working on EOS, learning about EOS, and we get to know them and hire the best ones.
I got to talk to Vincent about this a little bit, and I think it's such a brilliant idea. And if there's any way y'all could replicate this so that you can export it to other teams and say, here's a university, working with the university's best practices, like here's the model, do it. And then we'd have dozens of, potential access points with different universities. That'd be amazing. So
that's part of Vincent's vision. If I'm not mistaken, I think he might have already started talking to some people who are interested in exporting this model. So the idea is, you need someone who can go out and talk to the universities and basically sell them on this, pitch them some projects, get their students excited to build them. And there's even an opportunity, like we could help scale that too. It's like, maybe you're not a developer, maybe you don't have Denny's ability to mentor these students, but sell the university on joining the program, and we can help mentor them.
Maybe there's a Pomelo pitch somewhere in there.
Maybe there is. I like the sound of that.
Sounds like a public good to me, and it sounds like it's time to take this thing home. So we always end these shows in a very particular way. I hope you guys are familiar with it, but we like to end these shows with a good old Go EOS. So unless you guys have anything else you want to squeeze in here, and once again, thank you for everyone who made it to the end of this video. If you haven't already, smash that like button for us. But let's go out of here on a high note. So what do you guys say?
Sounds good. Let's do it.
Who wants to do the countdown? Brandon, you want to do the countdown?
Okay, on 3. 1, 2, 3. Go.
Go EOS!
Nice.